So, hello from Ukraine. You are watching Channel 24. My name is Andriy Drozda, and our guest today is Marcin Zaborowski, Policy Director of GLOBSEC organization, which is a global think tank based in Bratislava, actually, and committed to enhancing security, prosperity, and sustainability in Europe and throughout in the world. Mr. Zaborowski, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Okay, so today I would like to talk to you and ask you more about the consequences of the war in Russia against Ukraine. I mean, all the effects made on European security and on economy. You are from Poland originally, yes? And it is your country that has a very long history of opposing Russia, actually. Poles, Lithuanians, Estonians, Latvians, and many other Europeans know what Russia is actually and how dangerous it can be. How much has this war in Ukraine changed European understanding of Russia, its nature, its culture, etc., and other effects?
Well, thank you, Andrea. I think this is really the central question here because, you rightly pointed out that when you are based in Warsaw, when you are based in Vilnius or Tallinn, you have the perception of Russia that this is a predatory power which can use opportunity to expand. And you know it from history, it happened so many times before. And we never stop thinking that it may happen. This is what we've been telling our West European colleagues in Western Europe since 1990s, since actually the end of the Cold War, which was heralded in the West that this is the end of the division, and ever since the West was kind of bent on finding a cooperative relationship with Russia. Which very often meant that the West was bending backwards and forwards to accommodate to various Russian demands. And we, the Poles and the Baltic states, we always thought that Western Europe is naive about it. That Russia is not a friend, it's not a partner, it is a predatory power which has not reconciled with the fact that it stopped being an empire, and that it dreams about the return to the superpower status. And we've been told for many years that we are being Russophobic, that we exaggerate, that we don't understand, that we are being, just basically living in this world of paranoia. And strangely, in the last few months, we've been told but yes, it is actually the Poles and the Balts who got Russia right. And in fact, the president of EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, did say so during her State of the Union address. She said, we are sorry, we did not listen and we did not accept the vision of our Eastern members of the European Union. And we were told the same thing from Germany also by the President Steinmeier. President Steinmeier has also acknowledged that actually it's been the Poles and the Balts who had the right perspective on Russia. And that Russia is not a partner, it is not a friend, it is a power which wants to expand and which does not respect the rights of our other powers to self-determination and sovereignty.
Well, this vision actually is changing right now in European Union, in Europe. Well, after the collapse of Soviet Union in 1990s, it seemed there was a chance for Russia to join the Western civilization. I mean, they had a market economy after communist times and some freedom of speech. Some elections were held. But then somehow this chance to join the Western civilization and Western world was completely vanished, was lost after Putin came to power and his well-known speech in Munich in 2007 when he criticized the Western countries strictly and very hardly. was the chance real for Russia to be a European civilization, because, even oppositional leaders of Russia, some liberal Russians with liberal views, they say we are European civilization. Our literature is European, our music, our culture, but we see a big difference between Russia and Western values and Western vision. Was that chance real then, and will Russia has this chance to transform itself and join Western world once again in future?
Well, it is difficult. It's very difficult to foresee Russia being, transforming itself into a functioning democracy and a state which respects other rights of its neighbors to live in secure borders. There are, of course, some leaders of opposition in Russia in the past and even today, who one might say are dreaming or are hoping for transition to democracy. But in the past, there was, for example, Boris Nemtsov, who, as we know, was killed, and that development did not really spark some major protests in Russia. Then these days it's Alexander Navalny, who is also, one might say, a Democrat. He wants
Alexei Navalny.
Alexei Navalny. I'm sorry, Alexei Navalny, who definitely would like a more liberal, more free, more democratic Russia. But even these leaders do actually have a problem with accepting, for example, Ukraine in the borders, including Crimea. So even the Russian Democrats seem to have fallen in love with that vision of the Russian Empire in these borders, going beyond what the state of 1991, beyond the borders of 1991, basically. Yeah? So this kind of I would call it an illness of Russian imperialism is something which unfortunately is very popular in the country, and which is shared by, of course, the authoritarian leaders, the security services, Russian population at large, but also the leaders of Russian opposition.
Got it. How will this war in Ukraine change the security system in the European Union, in the West? Will it make NATO stronger, especially in the eastern side of Europe?
Well, it has already changed NATO. Like the past, NATO was really focused on things like crisis management, fight against terrorism, operations in the remote parts of the world, like Afghanistan, for example, or Kosovo. And during the post-Cold War era, NATO was playing down the need for self-defense, saying and you can see it in, for example, the strategic document that NATO adopted in 2010. In 2010, NATO adopted the strategic document in which it says that it's hoping for a strategic partnership with Russia. And also it is saying we are not threatened by anybody. We are not threatened by a state. We are threatened by things like falling states, international crime, terrorism, that kind of thing, but not by Russia. So that was only 12 years ago, and NATO adopts new documents only every 10 or 12 years of that nature, the strategic document. So the last document that NATO adopted was now in June 2022. It happened in Brussels, and in the new document, NATO completely re-emphasize the issue of defense and deterrence and the need to protect itself against the Russian threat. Russia is very clearly defined as a threat, and the purpose of NATO is to defend the alliance against the Russian threat. This is very revolutionary, because it also, it brings with itself certain practical implications. That means that NATO needs to strengthen its foothold. It needs to strengthen its presence at the eastern flank of the alliance, meaning in Poland, in the Baltic states, in Slovakia, in Romania. So this is new. And NATO has been sort of growing up to this kind of a posture and adopting this kind of a posture in the last few months, really.
And last week, Ukraine applied for NATO membership after Russia annexed our territories. For sure, it was a public political step of Ukrainian government and Ukrainian president. It is almost impossible, we all know that, for the country which is in active war mode to join NATO. But what are the prospects of Ukraine to be a NATO member after war against Russia will be over?
Well, legally speaking, I mean, I see no reason why Ukraine should not join NATO immediately after the cessation of violence. Let's just make it clear that NATO declared an open door policy towards Russia in 2008 at the summit in Bucharest, open door policy towards Ukraine and Georgia. So NATO said already 14 years ago that it will at some point it will open up to accept Ukraine and Georgia. Now we also have Bosnia and Herzegovina as a potential candidate. Another not an easy case. Yeah. So we know that the whole process of enlargement is taking years. And years of preparation. For example, the process of NATO enlargement towards Poland, and as well as Czech Republic and Hungary, that took about 6 years. So I think it's wise for the Ukrainian government to file the application now, start the process, which means that NATO will consider that. It will perhaps offer a membership action plan towards Ukraine, and it will perhaps, make a whole decision just ready-made until the time when the violence ceases and Ukraine will become, in a condition in which it can become a member of the alliance.
Yeah, probably the one and only reason why NATO is still very careful with their position for the Ukraine is that the NATO members just don't want to be in a direct clash with Russia, in direct military conflict, because there is this paragraph number 5 that NATO members should protect each other in case of direct attack and aggression from the other side. So that's why they are still taking this, keeping distance and make very, very careful comments. I mean, Stoltenberg and other officials from NATO.
Yes, I mean, this is very correct. I mean, Article 5 of the Northern Atlantic Treaty, which is the cornerstone of the alliance, says very clearly that an attack on one of the members is an attack on all of the members. That in effect means that if one member is attacked, then the other members should come to the rescue and support, not just send military aid, but engage directly militarily in the protection of that member. So at the moment, NATO is not in a position of being ready for direct military confrontation with Russia. NATO is in a position of helping out Ukraine to defend itself, but there is a worry that a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia could actually mean a third world war and perhaps even a nuclear confrontation.
We often hear from Russian propaganda on TV and other media, other channels, that Ukraine wouldn't be the last country that Russia can attack or attacked. The next can be Baltic states or Finland or even Poland or Moldova or other ones. Is it just bluffing? Is it just pretending to be so powerful and dangerous from the Russian side? Or those plans could be real?
Well, Russia is an opportunistic power, like many other states. But in case of Russia, it's kind of the proportions which are probably most predatory in the entire world. And we in Poland, we know that whenever Russia is given an opportunity to expand, it expands. It always does that. And in fact, the Polish president, Lech Kaczynski, when he traveled during the war between Russia and Georgia in 2008, he traveled to Tbilisi. He took with himself president of the Baltic states. He stood on the central square in Tbilisi and he said very clearly, today is Georgia, tomorrow might be Ukraine, then Baltic states, and then who knows, perhaps Poland. And a few years later, we already had the Russian takeover of Crimea. Then obviously, the war in Donbass and Lugansk. Now we see the annexation, the attempted annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions by Russia. And when you look into what the Russians are doing in the south, you can see that they want to design a kind of a corridor leading straight to Moldova. And in Moldova, you have Transnistria, obviously with the Russian population who will claim that it wants to be really protected by Russia. Then you have Russian minorities in Latvia, in Estonia, and then you have whatever pretext Russians find to invade Lithuania and Poland. So this is what happened in the past, and I think that we very realistically should expect that this is what Russia wants to do again.
And we all heard about the huge money that Russia spends on its propaganda in the West, Russia Today and other so-called media. Moscow has probably also paid to some politicians and influential, renowned intellectuals, academics in European Union countries, members, and other Western countries. How many Russian agents are there in the West, and how dangerous they could be?
Oh, I think that many, yeah. It's certain people do not even hide pro-Russian business interests, such as the former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, who took a decision to build this Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which made Germany dependent on energy supplies from Russia. He was taking incredible amount of money from Gazprom, and he became a very rich man because of payoffs from the Russians. Then we have people like the leader of the biggest French opposition party, Marine Le Pen, who took a loan, apparently kind of a loan which she never would need to repay, of 30 million euro to pay for her campaign. We have people like leader of the Italian far-right party, Lega, Salvini, who also is in the pockets of the Russians. And whenever you look into the right-wing populist parties in Europe, you almost always find, pro-Russian links there and pro-Russian business links. Now, there is also a body of academics which are traditionally pro-Russian. I'm not saying they are corrupt, they are just simply very often naive. And very often they just use the kind of theoretical models to say that, oh, look, like United States invaded Iraq, so why should we expect that Russia does not invade Ukraine? So the kind of the people who explain Russia and who justify the kind of a policy that Russia is pursuing towards its immediate neighbors. So there is both corruption, there is serving as Russian agent. For example, Mr. Snowden, who became now the Russian citizen. And then there is also a naivety. A lot of Europeans, Americans, when they think about Russia, they think about like white bears, like, Dostoevsky, Pushkin, ballet, and they think, this is such a nice power, and these are such nice people. They can be so charming and nice when we drink vodka with them. I don't believe that they can be particularly dangerous to us if we respect them. So you have this kind of naivety. Of course, if you come from Ukraine, from Poland, but this is just silly. But a lot of Western Europeans just buy into this kind of romantic myth of Russia.
Yeah, that's true. You mentioned those pipelines, Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2. On September 26th, there were strange explosions on Russian gas pipelines in Baltic Sea, both of them. And Sweden now says that their investigation shows leaks strengthened suspicion of gross sabotage. Basically, they say it was artificial explosions. Who can stand behind these explosions, and what does this accident mean for European energy security?
Look, the truth is that we don't know. Yeah, the truth is that we really don't know. I mean, Russia is the only power who is to gain from these explosions, because these explosions are making it clear that Russia can decline of its obligations to supply Germany with the gas that was contracted, and it kind of strengthens Russian negotiating position. Because the Russians might be saying, we don't have technical ability to do what we were contracted to do. If you want us to ensure your energy security, you really have to enter into new energy discussion and new energy links with us, which needs to start with you lifting the sanctions. And this is what the Russians really want. Now they have basically a reason to say that they don't have to fulfill the obligations which in terms of like business relations they have towards Germany and other Western European countries.
Yeah, interesting. And what do you think about, if we talk about the future after our victory against Russia and possible transformations in Belarus or in Russia, what do you think about the quality of the opposition there, opposition powers? Do they have a potential to change anything in their countries after Lukashenko or Putin regimes would collapse?
Well, I already said a few words about the Russian opposition.
Yeah.
I mean, you very gifted people in Russia. You have a middle class in Russia. You have people who traveled around the world, people who have good education. So there is this layer of society in Russia which could actually become a engine of democratic transformation. But as I said before, this does not necessarily mean that these people would refrain from some nationalistic rhetoric and even policies towards the neighbors, because that's very deeply in the Russian perception of international relations. It's there, and I don't think that this is likely to disappear very soon. Now, as you also mentioned, Belarus. In Belarus, you have very interesting leadership. You have Madame Tikhanovskaya, who is really matured into a great stateswoman, and I think she definitely has the ability to lead Belarusian opposition towards democracy. Also, in the last months and years, we've seen amazing transformation in Moldova, for example, from country which was, really very often led by corrupt and pro-Russian politicians, these days being led by a very pro-European, dynamic and interesting government. So I think that the cases of both Moldova and Ukraine are showing that the ex-Soviet republics can find their way to democracy and can mature in a closer relationship with the West. And I certainly hope that both Moldova and Ukraine, perhaps even Georgia, will join the European Union very soon. As we know, both Moldova and Ukraine are now official candidates for the membership in the Union.
Yeah, we all hope so, that we will join European Union soon. But let's talk about this year perspectives and prospects and forecasts. About the energy security, I have one question about that. What are the most likely scenario for winter in European countries, considering our war in Ukraine against Russia and refusal of some European countries to use Russian gas? Now, after all these explosions on pipelines, it is understood that Russian gas will not be used and transferred to European countries. How difficult will this year's winter time would be for European countries?
It will be difficult. People will have to, the energy prices are going up. This has implications, ramifications for businesses. This has implications for people. But this is a price for freedom and a price for security. I think the Europeans are prepared to put up with it now.
This is good to be so optimistic. We really hope that we will go through together and be stronger after this winter and find another strategy how to oppose this Russian blackmailing using pipelines and other tools. So probably the last questions. Most of Russians still don't believe that their army can fail and lose the war in Ukraine. They just say it is too big to fail. What do you think about this?
We just see that it can fail and it is failing.
Failing right now, yeah?
That's what I can say on the matter.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this conversation, Mr. Zaborowski. It was a pleasure to have you on our channel, and we hope to see you someday soon and to continue our dialogue on our channel. Thank you so much for finding time and for this conversation.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you. And thank you, our dear audience, for watching. We hope to see you soon on our channel with our new guest.